Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Mari. I'm one of the librarians at Portland Public Library in Portland, Maine, and I'm here today to read you a picture book. The picture book that we're going to read is called Rapunzel. Rapunzel was originally written down by the Brothers Grimm, but because it's a fairy tale, or a tale that comes from oral tradition, what that means is that people have told this story many, many times over history, and it's been passed down from generation to generation. Now there are these two brothers whose last name was Grimm, that's why they're called the Brothers Grimm, who decided to put together a lot of these stories and collect them and write them down. And so that's why we associate the Brothers Grimm with some of these fairy tales. However, this particular version of Rapunzel has been retold or written down in a particular way by Barbara Rogasky and illustrated by Trina Schart Hyman. So here is the cover. On the end pages, we just see this lovely pink color and the title page, Rapunzel, with this border. You can see almost like a preview what's to come. Rapunzel from the Brothers Grimm, retold by Barbara Rogasky with illustrations by Trina Schart Hyman. And this book is published by Holliday House, who've been kind enough to let us read this to you. Once upon a time, long ago, a husband and wife lived together in a cottage in the woods. Their life was poor but happy, and for many years they yearned for a child of their own. At long last, the wife learned that she was going to have a baby, and she and her husband were filled with joy. Now, at the back of their small house was a little window that looked out over a magical and wonderful garden. Every day, the woman would stand on a stool and peer out at delicious-looking vegetables and beautiful flowers. But she could never do anything except look, because the garden was surrounded by a high stone wall. Besides, the garden was owned by a witch who was very old and very powerful. Her name was Mother Gothel, and she was so feared that even the people who had never seen her had nightmares about her. Day after day, the woman would climb on the stool and look out the window at the garden. She noticed that in the very center there was a patch of rampion, which some people used in salads. After that, no matter where she looked, her eyes came back to the rampion. She desperately wanted to taste it for herself. The yearning grew, and before long all she could think about was the wonderful salad that the rampion would make. She spent more and more of her time staring out the tiny window. She stopped eating because nothing could taste as good to her as a salad made from that rampion in the witch's garden. And soon she grew thin and weak until she could barely climb on the stool to look out over the window. Her husband noticed all of this, and he was half mad with worry. "My wife," he said to her, "what is the matter with you? Our baby will be here soon, and you're too thin and frail to give it birth. What is wrong?" "Ah, husband," she sighed, "I want what I cannot have." "What is that?" he asked, and he had to lean forward to hear her, so weak had her voice become. "The rampion," she replied. "Is that all?" He leapt up, ready to get her some. She shook her head. "The rampion from the witch's garden." The husband sat back down. "But no one can get into that garden." "I know it," she said, her voice getting weaker and weaker. "But I think I shall die unless I can have some of that rampion." The man loved his wife very much. He patted her hand. "Don't worry," he said. "I'll find a way." He thought, and he finally said to himself, "What else can I do? I cannot let her die, no matter how dangerous it is." So that night, gathering his courage, he climbed over the wall, quickly pulled up some of the plants, and climbed back home again. His wife was so overjoyed that she hardly stopped to thank him. She made an enormous salad and ate every bite. That finished the rampion. There was not a single piece left. The very next day she began to yearn for it once more. Once again she stopped eating and kept staring out of the window at the witch's rampion, and once more she grew thin and weak, barely able to climb on the stool. Her husband did not wait long this time. He succeeded once, and he would do it a second time. He resolved to get her what she craved. After dark, he climbed over the high wall and went straight to the patch of rampion. But now the witch stood waiting for him. Hate gleamed from her eyes. "Thief! Foul thief! How dare you sneak into my garden and steal my rampion? Now I will have to punish you." The husband shook so much from fright that he almost could not speak. "Oh, Mother Gothel, please," he begged. "Don't hurt me. It wasn't my fault. I did it for my wife. She saw your beautiful rampion from our window, and now it's all she can think of. She won't eat anything else. I'm afraid she'll die and take our unborn child with her. I never would have done it otherwise. Please don't hurt me." And when the witch heard of an unborn child, the evil fell away from her face. "I won't harm you," she said to the husband. "You can take as much of the rampion as you need to keep your wife well, but you have to promise me one thing." "Anything, anything," the husband cried. "Swear that when your child is born, if it is a daughter, you will give her to me." Like a rabbit frozen with fear, the husband agreed, and the witch sent him home with an armful of rampion. On the very day the woman gave birth to the child, the witch appeared. She took the baby from her cradle and said, "I will name you Rapunzel," which means rampion in their country, and then, paying no mind to the tears and cries of the baby's mother and father, she left the cottage with the infant girl in her arms. The witch was never unkind to Rapunzel. Indeed, she gave her almost anything that a child could wish for. And Rapunzel grew to be the most beautiful child in the world. She had long blonde hair as thick and glowing as sunlight or beaten gold. When Rapunzel was 12 years old, the witch took her deep into the forest to a place where a tall tower stood, surrounded by thorns. High at the very top was a small room with just one window. The witch shut Rapunzel inside and then sealed the door and took down the stairs. In the room, Rapunzel stayed locked away from the world. She saw no one but her witch mother, and nothing of the outside except for the view from her window. The witch came to see her once or twice a week. She would stand outside the tower and call, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And Rapunzel would loosen the thick braids from her head, wind them around the window latch, and drop them down the long distance to the witch standing below. Mother Gothel would climb the braids to the window using Rapunzel's hair as a ladder. Several years passed this way, with Rapunzel locked in the tower and the witch using her braids to climb into the room. One day, the king's son was riding through the forest. He heard Rapunzel's sweet, lonely voice singing a song that pierced his heart. He rode hither and yon until he found the tower, but try as he might, he could find no way to get inside. When night fell, he left the forest and rode home, but he could not forget the beauty of Rapunzel's voice, and the next day he returned to the tower to hear it once more. The song was as lovely as he remembered, so he came back every day to hear Rapunzel's voice again. One afternoon, when the prince stood listening, Mother Gothel came. He quickly hid behind some trees where she could not see him, and he heard her call out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And he watched amazed as Rapunzel let down her hair, and the witch climbed up to the top of the tower. "So that's how it's done," he said. "Tomorrow I shall do the same thing." The next day at sundown, he stood at the foot of the tower and called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And down tumbled the thick golden hair. He climbed up swiftly and entered the small room through the window. Rapunzel was terribly frightened when she saw him. She had been expecting Mother Gothel. Besides, she had never in her life seen a man before. But the prince calmed her by speaking gently and kindly to her. He told her that he had heard her lovely song, and that it had touched him so deeply that he could not rest until he had seen her. At that, Rapunzel smiled, and her fear of him disappeared. The smile made Rapunzel even more beautiful. The prince fell in love with her then and there, and embraced her tenderly. He pleaded for her to be his wife, and to come away with him to his father's kingdom. Rapunzel thought carefully before she answered. He is certainly better looking than Mother Gothel, she said to herself, and he's nicer. Mother Gothel never says such sweet things to me. To the king's son she said, Prince, I would gladly be your wife and come away with you, but as you see I am locked in this room. You can help me. Each time you come, bring a skein of silk with you. I will weave a strong ladder out of them and climb down that. Then we can go together to your kingdom. But you must promise, she warned him, to only come in the evening. Mother Gothel visits during the day. The prince agreed, and therefore after each time he came to see Rapunzel, he called out, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. And he climbed up her braids, each time carrying silk. Slowly and secretly, Rapunzel wove the silk into a strong ladder, when strong enough to carry her own weight. After some time, the ladder was almost finished, and Mother Gothel still knew nothing. But one day when Rapunzel had watched the witch make her clumsy climb to the tower, the girl forgot her secret. Mother Gothel, she said, how is it that it takes you so long to climb up here when the king's son does it so fast? Oh, wretched girl! The witch flew into a rage. Wicked, ungrateful child! I thought I had hidden you from the world. I thought I had given all your heart could desire, and now you have betrayed me? In her great fury, she snatched a pair of scissors and cut Rapunzel's braids from her head. Then, using the secret silken ladder to descend from the tower, she took Rapunzel deeper still into the woods to a cold and desolate place, and left her there to live or to die in loneliness and misery. The witch returned to the tower and immediately pulling up the ladder behind her. At dusk she heard the prince call, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. The witch wrapped Rapunzel's hair on the window latch and dropped the blades down to the prince. As usual, thinking nothing was amiss, he climbed to the tower room. But instead of his beautiful wife, for by that time they had married, he saw a hideous witch, evil shooting from her eyes like flames. Thief! Foul thief, she whispered. You have come to see your darling, your beautiful songbird, have you? The cat got her. Yes, the cat got her, and she will never sing again. And my handsome, sneaking lad, the same cat will get your eyes. I swear you will never see Rapunzel again. Never. The prince was frozen with fear and mad with grief. He backed away from Mother Gothel's awful rage without thinking, and fell out the window. He did not die, however. The thorn bushes at the bottom of the tower acted like a cushion and saved his life. But the thorns put out his eyes and blinded him, and he could see no more. For a year, he wandered like a homeless beggar in the forest, lamenting the loss of his love Rapunzel. The tears from his sightless eyes gave salt to the roots and berries that he ate to stay alive. Because he could not see, the prince never knew where he was or whether it was night or day. One day at sundown, he happened to pass the barren place where Rapunzel now lived with the twins that she had borne. She was singing as she often did to ease her loneliness and to soothe the babies. The prince heard her voice and knew that it was Rapunzel. With the faltering steps of a blind man, he sought out the place where Rapunzel sang and fell to his knees before her. Despite his changed appearance, Rapunzel knew him immediately. Her happiness was so great at the sight of him that she could not speak. She threw her arms around his neck and wept for joy. Her tears flowed into the prince's eyes, and they cleared. He saw light, and then his beloved Rapunzel. He could see again as well as he ever had before. Carrying the twins, they left the bare and desolate place in the forest forever. They returned to the prince's kingdom, and there they lived happily ever after for many long and loving years. You can see the witch down here. And that is the end of that story. Thank you for joining us. That was Rapunzel, originally collected by the Brothers Grimm, retold by Barbara Rogasky, and illustrated by Trina Schart Hyman. My name is Sarah Mari. I'm one of the librarians at Portland Public Library in Portland, Maine. Thank you for joining us for this story that's a little different than the other ones that we've been doing. We'll be back again on Monday with more stories. Bye!